President William Ruto has fired yet another warning shot at sugar barons behind the collapse of the country's sugar sector. The head of state warned that sugar barons and those who are running the various collapsed factories in the sugar-growing areas that the government has embarked on investigations and has written off the debts owned by the state-owned factories and that they will be held responsible and prosecuted if found culpable for the mess. Speaking at the Shoni Sugar grounds in Migori County, where farmers laid bare their tribulations, the head of state said that they will soon unveil the leasing program that will see the factories roar back to life again. Chemutai Goin has that report.
Day 3 of President William Ruto's intense tour of the Nyanza region started with a church service held at the Ruto Technical Institute in Mark Nyamita's Uriri constituency, Migori County. But it was at the Shoni Sugar Factory grounds in Awendo constituency where the president tested the bitter taste the collapse of the multi-billion shillings sugar industry had left in the mouths of farmers.
My proposal as national chairman, national government, county government, farmers, miller and sugar director acquire atengeneza board ndio tufuate hii pesa yetu. Hakuna pesa ambayo inakata na hakuna farmers representative hapo, pesa naenda ukiolea. Hakuna saidia mimi on behalf of farmers. Hakuna kitu kingine. Maneno ambayo utatoka naye leo. Area hiyo mimi najua utamaliza payment nini. Hii hakuna tabu. Wewe ndio Mungu yetu. Mungu iko juu lakini wewe ndio Mungu ya pili. Maliza hii maneno.
When the president took to the podium, he told the farmers that while the government had agreed to foot their 117 billion shillings owed by state-owned sugar factories, the action will not be without consequence for those who mismanage the facilities.
Mkulima amelete miwa, imesagwa, imeuzwa. Mkulima hajalipwa, mfanyikazi hajalipwa. Mnataka tuendelee na hiyo biashara? Hatuwezi kuendelea ati sasa tukuje tuanze tena baada ya mwaka moja, mwaka mbili, mwaka tatu turudi hapa tena. Wakulima hawajalipwa, wafanyikazi hawajalipwa, tafuta pesa ya serikali. Hiyo mimi siwezi fanya. Hawa watu wote ambao wamechangia hii maneno, mambo yao ni matatu. Hakuna story nyingine.
With some of the court cases stalling the leasing of sugar factories having been withdrawn, the farmers urged the president to move with speed to facilitate the reopening of the factories.
Mambo ya kuprivatize kampuni haiwezekani. We are going to have a leasing program where we are going to have a company that is going to make sure they pay the workers, they pay the farmers, na vile vile lazima tuanze kupata pesa ya wananchi wa Migori kutoka hii kampuni.
Tuko hapa na factory ine. Sukari, Shoni, Kisii, Transbara, hiyo ni regional. Je, kama tumeweka soko huru na umeshapatia sisi fertilizer, mimi nilime samba hapa gunia yako 20, tena mioyo yako iende huko Transmara, how the government enda ku recover this money? That's why wengine ambao napiga soko huru nataka ngusa wewe.
Do not allow importation of sugar in the hands of private profiteers. Establish a state corporation that will be able to import sugar and give it to distributors at the right price.
Wengine wamekuwa kiongea miaka mingi wakisema tutafanya hii tutafanya vile, lakini kwa mara ya kwanza tunaona mwangaza katika sekta yetu ya sukari, na pia sisi wakulima wetu kule Kakamega wamefurahi sana.
His tour of the stronghold of Azimio leader Raila Odinga was also laced with political undertones.
Nimekuja hapa na liberate. Ndio nizungumze na ninyi. Mnaelewa? Kwa sababu umetupatia nafasi ya uongozi. Na mimi nataka niwahakikishie ya kwamba wale viongozi wote mmewachagua, mimi nitafanya kazi pamoja na wao.
The president has said that time for politics is over. It's now time for development. And all parts of the country will be served by this government indiscriminately, irrespective of the voting patterns that we witnessed in the last elections.
Hao watu ambao wametuchagua, walichagua watu wafanyie kazi. Mimi na wabunge wengine tuliona wisdom, lazima tufanye kazi na serikali ndio maendeleo ikuje kwa wananchi.
The president further made a case for the Universal Health Coverage Plan, revealing that it will be unveiled on the 20th of this month. In Kuria West, he launched the Mabera Affordable Housing Project, a 200-unit project that will create 600 job opportunities for the youth in the region. Chemutai Goin, Citizen TV.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says he has no apologies to make over his shareholders' narrative or remarks, saying those who voted for the Kenya Kwanza administration should reap big from the government. The second-in-command was speaking in the county of Nandi, where he led a fundraiser toward the construction of the SAK Plaza in Kapsabet town, also dismissed claims that there are differences between himself and the president. Martin Munene takes a look at the hole in the account of the presidency.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was in President William Ruto's Rift Valley backyard on Sunday, where he presided over a fundraiser in aid of Kapsabet ACK Church. And here the DP made it clear that he was not backing down on his shareholders' gospel that has left a bad taste in many people's mouths.
I am unapologetic to demand and to insist that those who believed in William Ruto and supported him to a man have every right to benefit immensely from his government. I have no apology at all. And if that can bring a problem, so be it.
The second in command insisting that he has a duty to protect the interests of those that voted in the Ruto administration, and he will not stop anytime soon.
For now, there are certain positions ambaye itakuwa ni ya wale watu walimuamini William Ruto, walikubaliana na mipango yake ya kubadilisha Kenya, walimpigia kura na walionesha mapenzi kwake. Those positions, I continue to insist.
Gachagua pointing an accusing finger at the media and refuting claims of a rift between him and his boss.
Please don't waste your time. There will be no division in this government. President William Ruto and I talk the same language. We consult, we agree, and we move on. And the president is taking us to the right place. What we are doing and what I'll continue to do is uniting the backyard of President William Ruto in the Mount Kenya region and the Rift Valley.
Umesema jana Meru kuwa unatafuta wale walikuwa wameenda Azimio wakapotea njia. Nataka nikupea assignment ya hapa nyumbani na Rift Valley. Ukimaliza Mount Kenya kutafuta wale walikuwa wamepotea njia, kuja tutafute sisi pia wale walikuwa wamepotea njia.
Gachagua explaining his Mount Kenya unity bid as a move aimed at ensuring President William Ruto gets a decisive victory in the next general election, as the president seeks to loop in other regions in their 2027 political game plan.
So mimi niko mulima Rift Valley mulima. Wananiingilia, huyu ni naibu rais wa Kenya, bona anaenda Rift Valley, anaenda mulima, anaenda Rift Valley. For the time being nitakaa hapo. Wacha rais azunguke, aende Kisumu, aende Kisii, aende Kakamega, aende kila pahali, ili atapata aniletee niongeze na ile yetu.
The deputy president has come under heavy criticism lately over his stand that those that voted in the president should be first among equals in serving in government. Martin Munene, Citizen TV.
The deployment of police officers to Haiti will be subjected to parliamentary approval. Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki said there will be no shortcuts or violations of the Constitution in deployment of police officials to Haiti. The UN Security Council on Monday last week approved the deployment of international forces to be led by Kenya to curb the escalating gang violence in Haiti. And as Benkirwe reports, the CS who spoke in Kiambaa in Kiambu County also promised to make known the criminals who have been terrorizing innocent Kenyans in the county of Lamu.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki, who joined worshippers for Sunday service and Thanksgiving at St. Andrew's ACK Ndenderu Church in Kiambaa, Kiambu County, announced that the deployment of police to Haiti, which was approved by the United Nations Security Council on Monday last week, will have to get a nod from the National Assembly and the Senate.
Serikali kwanza itahakikisha tumepeleka ombi hilo katika bunge la Kenya kwa mujibu wa sheria ya Kenya. Kwa hivyo wabunge wa mabunge yote mawili mujitayarishe. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka niwahakikishie watu ya Kenya, hii sio serikali ya shortcut.
Article 240 of the Constitution allows the National Security Council through Parliament to approve the deployment of national forces outside Kenya for regional or international peace support operations and also the deployment of foreign forces in Kenya. The Interior CS further dismissed concerns that the mission, which will see about 1,000 Kenyan troops deployed to war-torn Caribbean country, will jeopardize security in the country, asserting that Kenyans' safety remains to be a priority of all security organs. The deployment, despite receiving immense support from President William Ruto and the international community, has been met with criticism over Kenya's capability to tame the gangs in Haiti.
Usiwe na wasiwasi. Tumejipanga vizuri. Bado tuko na matatizo kidogo ya kiusalama, lakini wale polisi ambao tutapeleka tutahakikisha kwamba hatutahujumu usalama wetu wa taifa.
On security in Lamu, the CS promised to pursue and neutralize all the criminals terrorizing residents in Lamu County. The CS saying the government has identified the ring leaders and planners of the atrocities in Lamu County, and the list of the suspects will be published this week.
Tutaweka katika gazeti orodha ya washukiwa wakuu wa ugaidi ambao uchunguzi wetu umeonyesha wao ndio wapangaji wakuu wa mauaji ya wananchi pale Lamu.
CS Kindiki, who announced plans to tour the region, said the government will not allow criminals to use culture to brutalize the people and mislead them through retrogressive activities. Terror gangs have been carrying out regular attacks near the porous border with Somalia, as well as in coastal areas of Kenya. Recent attacks have seen more than 10 people killed. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
We cross over to the Middle East, where more than 600 Israelis have been killed and 100 kidnapped in attacks from Hamas that began on Saturday morning. The death toll rises as the Israeli government promised to paralyze operations of Hamas and the jihadists in Gaza. The fresh round of fighting between the traditional force began on Saturday with the shock terror attack that led to the deadliest day in decades for Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared a state of war, with the government declaring national state of emergency.
The fighting, which started on Saturday, has escalated, with both the Israeli and Palestinian sides ramping up their attacks on each other, resulting in hundreds of deaths, injuries and displacements. The Israeli government claims over 500 of her citizens have been killed and 100 more kidnapped by enemy forces, while retaliatory Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 370 people in the Gaza Strip, with 2,200 wounded, according to Palestinian officials. Israel is fighting to push Palestinian militants out of its territory a day after Hamas launched a deadly assault from Gaza, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowing retaliation and warning of a long and difficult war ahead. Israeli military said it had regained control of 22 regions and fighting was ongoing in 8 others. Saturday's shock terror attack led to the deadliest day in decades for Israel and came after months of surging violence between Palestinians and Israelis, with the long-running conflict now heading into uncharted and dangerous new territory. Questions are also swirling over how the Israeli military and intelligence apparatus appeared to be caught off guard in one of the country's worst security failures. Israel's political security cabinet convened late Saturday and made a series of operational decisions aimed at bringing out the destruction of the military and governmental capabilities of Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in a way that would negate their ability and desire to threaten and harm the citizens of Israel for many years to come, according to a statement from the office of Israel's Prime Minister. On Saturday morning, Hamas launched a wave of rocket attacks and fighters stormed into Israel fuel in the biggest escalation in decades. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has called for an end to attacks and violence in Israel and Gaza, saying terrorism and war will not solve any problems, but only bring further suffering and death to innocent people.
Now, with the latest hike in fuel prices, the highest ever on record, Kenya now has the 12th most costly fuel in the continent, with a litre of petrol on average retailing at over 200 Kenya shillings. So deep is the pain at the pump that motorists are now finding it hard to keep their engines running, and ordinary Kenyans are being forced to dig deeper into their pockets. Subsequently, illegal fuel products are now being smuggled into the country simply because they are sourced at cheaper prices. Patrick Igunza was in the border town of Moyale in Marsabit County, where the business of illicit fuel imports from neighboring Ethiopia is booming.
Kenya, East Africa's economic hub. However, for the past few months, the economic situation in the country has left millions of Kenyans reeling from the effects of it. Shrinking incomes and expanding tax obligations have made life almost unbearable to most, a majority of them being salaried individuals.
Chakula ni kali, mafuta ni kali, sisi nataka kuongea hata na Ruto sio nyinyi. Watu wameshaumia. Kwa njia gani? Kwa njia ya mafuta. Mafuta ikipanda kila moja, mpaka mama mboga, mpaka maduka, yote sisi tunategemea kutoka nje. Na hiyo bei iko juu, na ile yetu kwanza ni double.
For an ordinary Kenyan motorist, having a vehicle on the road equals digging deeper into one's pocket. Pump prices have been rising and rising to levels never seen before. And the government says we should prepare for tougher times ahead.
Sasa ukishinda kutoka asubuhi mpaka jioni, bei ya mafuta imeongezeka, si uchipe kisima yako. Dunia mzima tunajua bei ya crude oil imeenda juu.
No one better understands this than Man Njaro, not his actual name though. He is an online taxi driver who has been in the business for over 4 years.
Umepewa uende 2 kilometers kuchukua mteja. Alafu aende 2 kilometers ilipisha 190. Apewe discount ya 40 bob. Ibaki 150. Hii 150 bado kuna commission yao watacharge. Unabaki na about 100 bob na umetumia mafuta ya 211, about 1 liter. What business is that?
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't really make sense.
His is a cry that's shared by many taxi operators. The once lucrative occupation is now a job option that just helps them make ends meet day in, day out.
And especially watu wa online, wamekuwa most affected. Unajua sisi hatuna union, so tunaweza complain. Watu wa matatu wanaugana tu wana adjust their price. Sisi tunagojea paka wale watu wafanye, and they are not doing it.
Many are now forced to shift from living to just simply surviving.
Sasa hii imewachosha tu, mtu anaamuka tu because you don't have any other choice. Utakaa kwa nyumba.
It's an adjustment that calls for a drive from the country's capital to Marsabit, Kenya's biggest county, over 530 kilometers away. We are in the border town of Moyale. Residents experience far higher fuel prices than other parts of the country, and they have found ways to survive. Plastic bottles here, plastic bottles there, some small, many large. If you thought this was water or even cooking oil, then you are mistaken. These are petroleum products. This is diesel and petrol being sold along the streets of Moyale.
Mafuta tunatoa gambo ile hii ya Kenya imekuwa bei kali sana. Tumeshinda hata tunafanya aje.
Unusual as it may seem, these are common sins in Moyale town.
Afadhali mimi niweke ingine ya Ethiopia ndio iko sawa na mimi. Inakurudishia? Inanirudishia faida na iko sawa. Siwezi kapesosesha.
Residents have embraced this fuel consumption habit whose source is neighboring Ethiopia.
Sasa tunapita side ya Ethiopia ndio tuende kuweka mafuta kwa hapa tuko expensive. Na si makosa mwenye kuleta mafuta hapa. Ni policy tumewekewa na serikali. Minister of Trade and is making fun of it as if it is nothing.
Most of the traders here are women and they are not complaining. Business is booming.
Nauza mafuta ya Ethiopia 20 liters ni 2,800. Nauza hapa Kenya faida ni 200 tu. Siku nyingine faida ni kubwa. Ikipanda faida ni kidogo, ikishuka ni faida ni sawa.
The sheer number of bottles displayed by the roadside being a clear indication of the high demand for these fuel alternatives.
Huyu sasa kwa hapa atafanya kazi gani? Unaona? Na manduthi ndio hizi zimejaa kwa stage yake. Magari zote zinaenda pande hiyo. Mabasi nini unaongea nini mpaka matrela zinaenda kuweka huko mafuta.
Na ya Kenya imekuwa shida sana sasa juu ya bei juu sana. Sasa tujui tunalindaje hii maisha yetu.
Whilst a litre of petrol will set you back well over 200 shillings at pump stations, these street alternatives will cost you between 120 and 150 shillings, depending on whether you are buying them from the Ethiopian or Kenyan side of the border. However, the question is, how do these contrabands find their way into the Kenyan market?
This border is a white elephant. It's not working. The Panya routes are opening, but the main entry point is closed. We don't know what is not happening. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta came to Moyale to commission the border, to open up the border. In a couple of days' time, it was again closed. Then Panya route, the evacuation route was opened.
And while this economic situation is proving to be beneficial to a number of individuals within the value chain, there are those who feel like it is gradually pushing them out of business.
We were the first one to be licensed brand for rubies, so we thought the opportunity will be huge because there's trust with the brands more than the private-owned one.
Mohammed Abdullahi has been running this fuel station for over 3 years now, but competition from the smuggled fuel is giving him sleepless nights.
Anyone can sell fuel in Moyale, from mamambogas to kinyozi, to M-Pesa shops, to cafes, to small businesses, kiosks. Everyone sells fuel.
According to him, these street displays are just a tip of the iceberg.
Those that we are seeing displayed in every shop do not mean the quantity that they have. So even if now you came today, if you ask them, I want to fuel my car, you can fuel from any kiosk now.
And now his business is at the brink of closure.
Mahitaji ya kazi katika upande wa kulipa wafanyikazi, katika upande wa kulipa zile bills ambazo zinatakana kama stima, maji, ikiwa imefika kiwango ya kwamba unatoa kwa mfuko yako, hapo sasa unajua kwamba kazi imeisha.
It is the situation that is replicated across Moyale town. Established fuel stations are finding the illegal competition too stiff.
Misho nikienda Mombasa mimi kuchukua mafuta ilikuwa ni mwezi wa 3 hadi leo hii.
The same
yes, haijaisha.
On this day, Anwar Ahmed, a manager at this once popular station, has barely sold anything.
Mimi nakwambia unaona hiyo tank pale? Hiyo tanka iko pale. Nikiwa naanza nilikuwa namaliza kwa wiki 3. Leo hii as we are talking, waacha wiki 3, hata mwezi 6 siwezi maliza.
And as these establishments continue to suffer, livelihoods are being threatened.
Na waziri Chirchir kama anasikiza tafadhali. Bwana waziri, na tunakupenda sana. Nasikia ulituambia more is coming. So more is coming means that in the coming month hii itachange itakuwa 300 na. Are you expecting me to suck all this stuff? Si nitawavuta. Si inabidi. Na wataenda wapi?
Tuko na gari ya 18,000. Inabeba 18,000 liters. Hiyo gari tumeweka parking kwa sababu hizi lipa dereva. Dereva anaenda kwa mwezi mara moja na anataka pesa 50,000 kwa mwezi ama 40,000 uweze ukamlipa tumeweka parking.
For these dealers, all their hope is now on the government.
A country with no port, their fuel is cheaper than a country ambayo iko na port.
There's a time even EPRA visited us and we talked about this issue. We raised the issue with them. And it's something that they are seeing, but now nobody is there to help us.
Back in Nairobi, we visited the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, for a response. But our efforts to have an interview with them proved futile. Instead, an email response was sent to us, the authority refuting the trading of illegal petroleum products in the country, saying its continuous countrywide surveillance has resulted in high level of compliance. Gradually, these illegal fuel products are now being adopted by long-distance buses and trucks, most of which are headed to the capital city. The availability of the fuel on roads many kilometers away from Moyale is a testament of how fast they are selling. Ngabi mama, shika.
150.
Asante. Patrick Igunza, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Well, interesting bit on the hard times, squeezed household budgets because of the increment in fuel prices in the country, resulting into the illegal smuggling of the commodity from the border town of Moyale, that is near the Ethiopian border. 4 police officers are waiting for their day in court today after being arrested for soliciting and receiving bribes at a roadblock along the Thika-Garissa highway. The 4, including the deputy base commander, have been under surveillance by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission officials for days and were found with 12,000 Kenya shillings at the time of their arrest on Saturday. The arrest comes just days after senior police officials held a meeting with the head of public service and were instructed by the reign of police to not practice graft on the roads, as Brenda Wanga tells us in the following report.
The proverbial 40 days for the 4 traffic police officers at a roadblock along the Thika-Garissa highway came on Saturday afternoon. After nearly 2 weeks of covert surveillance of the officers at work, Ethics and Anti-Corruption officers pounced on the officers, catching them with their loot for the few hours they had been at the roadblock on Saturday. Tens of folded notes, glaring evidence of the illegal activities the officers allegedly engage in at this roadblock. Indeed, the arrests come in response to complaints from motorists using this road who claim that the officers manning this roadblock have turned it into a cash cow, collecting bribes from just about any and all motorists deemed to be guilty of a traffic offense. The police officers were caught on camera repeatedly taking bribes from the motorists flagged down at the roadblock over a period of 2 weeks. This public service vehicle is flagged by a police officer. In what appears to be routine and expected, the officer moves towards the vehicle and in a flash, the driver hands him something that he proceeds to pocket and waves the driver on his way. There is no inspection of the vehicle for any offense. The same scene is replayed time and again. From PSVs to personal vehicles, the drill is the same. A vehicle is stopped, the exchange happens, and the journey continues. Corruption on Kenyan roads is not something new, a fact acknowledged even by the Inspector General of Police as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Wandogo wanachukua, anapelekea kopuru anapelekea base commander, inatoka kwa base commander inaenda kwa OCPD, county commander ako pale. It is being said hata IG anapelekewa.
While effecting the arrests, the EACC has in the past attributed the rising cases of bribery on the roads to faulty systems that make bribe-taking attractive for those caught breaking traffic rules.
To streamline the system, regulate, automate the offenses, and people will have no way to bribe the policemen. Also, the public has a role, because we are also a Kiboko society.
Elsewhere in Kisumu, EACC officials also arrested Inspector of Police Joash Rotich for demanding a $500,000 shillings bribe in order to withdraw fabricated charges against a complainant, his wife and their daughter. The complainant, a transporter, had his goods destined for southern Sudan detained by the inspector on allegations that they were stolen. The inspector agreed to take 200,000 shillings as bribes and was immediately arrested after receiving the bribe. He is set to be charged once investigations are complete. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. When we get back from the break, we take a look at what has been happening over the weekend across the country. The head of state has been in Nyanza region and will be finishing his 4-day visit to the region today. The deputy president on Saturday was in Meru County. Yesterday he was in the county of Nandi. And the common denominator in the political arena has been the politics of shares, and who are the major shareholders is what remains the question. We'll be taking a look at that, and also the statement by the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Professor Kithure Kindiki, that Parliament is the next stop for the approval of 1,000 police officials to Haiti. There's a case challenging that move by Kenya following the UN Security Council meeting on Monday last week, which approved the international mission that will be led by Kenya. To what effect from the domestic and international angles is what we'll be discussing here on the broadcast with Nabi Nabwera, who is the MP Lugari constituency. His counterpart from Kadhiani, Robert Mbui, is as well in studio. We'll be joined shortly by Gadhoni Wamushomba, the Githunguri lawmaker, and the woman MP representing Meru County, Elizabeth Kailemia, who will be with us here on the broadcast and on Daybreak. After the break here on the broadcast, stay tuned.